Hey again, everybody. Let's talk today about how the World Baseball Classic, or the WBC, is going to affect baseball card sales over the next 3 to 4 weeks. So, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see an increase in people in the hobby that are going to be excited about all these players that are playing for their favorite teams or for their countries. We're going to see baseball take a front seat in regards to global news. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the Middle East right now, but these baseball players are playing for their hometown teams of, Great Britain and Israel and the United States and so on and so forth. And we're going to see a lot of these players being outspoken and excited about their countries and wearing their country's colors and being full of pride. And there's a lot of excitement. Let's start by talking about how I think the market's going to be impacted by these games. As these games start to be played and we start to see these teams face off against one another, there's going to be a ton of hype for the players that are playing on these teams. So some of the players that are already big-time players, like Aaron Judge or Cal Rowley or Fernando Tatis Jr., a lot of these guys, their markets are already really, really good. But some of these younger players that maybe their market is still kind of trying to catch up with their careers or decide if they're going to be really great or if they were one-hit wonders. Some of these guys like Pete Crow Armstrong or Wyatt Langford or some of these guys where, we've talked about in previous videos about it being their true second year, or even Jackson Merrill as another example. Some of these guys, they've only had one great season and maybe they struggled in their second season, or they had an okay rookie year and we don't know what they're going to do next. A good example of that is like James Wood. So honestly, let's talk about the World Baseball Classic specifically, but some of these guys that are playing for these teams, you're going to see their cards take a front row seat on the market. You're going to see people trying to sell their cards, trying to flip their cards, and there's going to be a lot of movement. So let's start with one of the bigger ones, Nolan McLean. He's a pitcher for the New York Mets, and he is playing for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. His market's already really hot because he's kind of a unique situation because his moment first is actually him as a hitter, because that's how he came up, was as a hitter. And now he's been pitching for the last couple of years, and now he's one of the top pitching prospects in baseball and had a great chance to pitch well last year and looks poised to do the same this year. So his cards are going to continue to rise. I'm actually going to be listing a few of his Bowman First Chromes here in the next couple of days on my eBay store because I think his cards are going to continue to go up. And he should pitch for the Mets starting right out the gate behind like Freddie Peralta. And I think that he's a really great buy and a really great sell during the World Baseball Classic. I know that there came out something that he had mono or was sick or something this week, so he may not be pitching right away in the World Baseball Classic, but I would venture a guess that he'll be available in the coming days and should pitch for Team USA. The next one I want to talk about is a really big prospect in the prospect world, which is Travis Bazzana. He plays for the Cleveland Guardians, and he will be playing for Team Australia in the World Baseball Classic. He's one that I would highly recommend both buying and selling, depending on how you feel about him. Personally, I'm not a huge Bazzana fan, but I think that his cards are going to go up as he plays in the World Baseball Classic because I would assume he'll do well. He's not my favorite prospect, and he's definitely not my favorite Guardians prospect, but he's a good prospect. His cards are relatively valuable, and I think that now would be a good time to buy them before he hits a home run in the World Baseball Classic. And then when you see that he does, go ahead and try to flip it for $5 or $10 more than you paid. Obviously, depends on if you're buying base chromes or if you're buying higher end stuff. But if you're buying Travis Bazzana, now's a really great time to buy some and then flip them during the World Baseball Classic. Another one that I'm looking at is Owen Casey. He was just traded from the Chicago Cubs to the Miami Marlins, and he is playing for Team Canada during the World Baseball Classic. He was a really hot buy going into last year, and he never really materialized in the season, but he ended up coming up, and he played okay, but he wasn't up to kind of what people thought he was going to be. I think he's going to do really well in the World Baseball Classic, and I highly recommend buying some of his cards before the Classic starts, and then trying to flip his cards if he does well during the Classic, and if he doesn't, then you can always flip them during the season, because I think he's going to have a spot in the Miami roster. Another one that I'm buying, and this is one of my favorite sleepers for the year at the catcher position, is Harry Ford. I think Harry Ford is a really great buy right now, and he's going to be playing for Team Great Britain during the World Baseball Classic, and he does play for the Washington Nationals as their number 2 catcher, and he is fighting for that number 1 spot with Keibert Ruiz on the Nationals roster. But I am a big fan of Harry Ford's. I've been watching him for a few years. I think he's a really great buy going into the World Baseball Classic. Last time during the World Baseball Classic, he hit a couple home runs, and he was a really popular hero for Great Britain. And I highly recommend buying in before he does that again, because his cards like doubled in value overnight, and he's an easy buy for me. Another big prospect that I would recommend buying is Michael Arroyo. He is an infielder for the Mariners. He's going to be playing for Colombia during the World Baseball Classic, and he has a ton of talent. He's been hitting really well in spring. The Mariners are really excited about him, and I think that he'll play well in the World Baseball Classic because he'll be carrying over his spring training work, and I think that he'll be a really good buy, and his cards are relatively cheap. And you can add them to your collection for investing or for flipping pretty easily. I've bought a couple of his True Blue Bowman First Autos, and I flipped those earlier this year. Now I kind of wish I would have kept them. But definitely something that he should be an easy flip during the World Baseball Classic, and I would highly recommend buying in. Another one I'm looking at, and this guy has a lot of hype behind him, is Enrique Bradfield Jr. He's an outfielder for the Baltimore Orioles, and people are loving him. He actually had a bunt where he ended up getting all the way to third base, which is very Elly De La Cruz-like. He's playing for Team Panama in the World Baseball Classic, and there's a lot of hype around him right now. I think his cards are already up quite a bit, but he is cheaper than some of the other prospects I've mentioned, so he would not be a bad buy either. And I think you'd be able to flip his cards real easily if he does well during the World Baseball Classic. And then if he doesn't, I think he's going to end up on the Baltimore roster this year at some point. And there's a good chance that he'll end up at least as a pinch runner and be a speedster on the roster, something like a Chandler Simpson type for the Rays. And I think he's a good fit. Another one that a lot of people are talking about is Elmer Rodriguez. He's a Yankees pitcher, and he's playing for Team Puerto Rico. A lot of people think that he is a future staple for the Yankees in their rotation. I personally think he's a trade piece for them, and I think they're probably going to move him during the season to get better somewhere else. But I think Elmer Rodriguez is a really good buy, and his cards are relatively cheap. Not super cheap, but they're relatively cheap, and I think he's another one of those that I'm buying going into the World Baseball Classic, and he should play a prominent role on that Puerto Rico team. And will ultimately, if he pitches well, could ultimately have his card skyrocket and be an easy flip before the season starts. My final one is a deeper sleeper. I'm a big fan of his, but I think he's still kind of a ways away. Is Drew Jones for the Diamondbacks? He plays for Team Netherlands, and I think that he's the son of Andrew Jones of the Atlanta Braves. I think that Drew Jones is a future prospect stud. When he was first drafted, everybody thought he was going to be everything and more, and he's kind of fizzled out down in the minors and lost a lot of his prospect shine. Because I think that even if you buy in now and he ends up being a mediocre major leaguer, I think his cards are still going to be relatively valuable. And if he plays well in the World Baseball Classic, it could propel him to have a shot at moving up to AAA this year, or even making it to the majors next year. I think he's a really, really easy buy, as kind of like here's $50 or $100 flyer for a bunch of cheap Bowman Firsts. And you could flip them pretty easily if he hits a couple home runs in the World Baseball Classic. So those are the guys that I'm looking at for the World Baseball Classic this year. I would highly recommend looking into some of these players yourself and seeing if you like any of them. If there's somebody I missed and you want to comment down below, I'd love to hear who you're buying in and who you're investing in, or who you're planning to flip. And then please don't forget to always like and subscribe. And thank you for stopping by, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.